What nations or non-state groups are the biggest threats to the United States, and how should we meet those threats? Mike, you're up.
It seems like it's
I think it's
Is it me?
Kathy. I went first.
It's okay. Whichever you think.
Didn't we go Chris, Mike, Kathy on the last one?
Chris might have. Yeah, we did.
Okay.
No.
All right. What nations or non-state groups biggest threats? Okay. So we're going to all answer this with absolutely no internal knowledge, because for any of us to stand up here and tell you that this group and that group are legitimate threats is ridiculous, because we don't have that information. None of us have that information. I don't care who you are. But with the information that we do know, North Korea is a threat. China is a threat on multiple facets. Pakistan rather is a threat. Places like Yemen, very unstable. You see the map, color those places in. Those are threats to our way of life. The unrest in South America, one of the things, going back to the immigration stance, I believe that people who are fleeing their country because they're in danger, and they very well might be, don't have to automatically come into the United States when they've crossed 3 or 4 countries to get here. I don't believe that. I like what the president has done with the new stay in the next country. That should be perfectly legit. And if it's not, then there's a problem. Is there really an issue? So, what nations, non-state groups? I think those named terrorist enemies of the United States, terrorist groups that have been named, from Hezbollah to Al Qaeda, you name it. Those are obviously threats to the United States. We have, aside from physical threats, there are also threats of our intelligence, especially from China. That is a huge threat. A friend of mine up here, that's a member of the party on the officers of Dorchester County, works in the cybersecurity and tells me a lot of what he can about how deep the cyber attacks happen, how quick. We're talking hourly. The Chinese are affecting and trying to dig into our cyber network. So, thank you.
So I just attended a conference called Awakening 2020, and it was a conservative conference, and one of the speakers, I was able to sit in on a global issues meeting with Admiral Jim Stavridis, who was our commander of the NATO forces for a long time, and he actually talked on this very subject. So, but the top 5 that he talked about, I won't go into all the details, but he definitely mentioned Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, and there was one other, and I'm sure I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, what I'd like to focus on is there was no question, and I actually ended up getting a chance to ask him a question. There was no question that the biggest threat right now is China. And we might say, well, we have a trade agreement with them now. Here's the problem. The problem is China started 7 years approximately ago, maybe even earlier, but we've known about it for about that long, on something called One Belt, One Road. And what it is, if you Google it, it is a program where they literally go around the world to underprivileged countries, and they, mostly in the southern hemisphere, and they will offer to say, hey, don't you want to become part of global trade? Oh, sure we would. So let's just use Sri Lanka. So they go to Sri Lanka and they say, wouldn't you like to do that? Yes, but we don't have the ability to build anything. Well, that's okay, we'll help you build, let's see, you need an airport. So then they say, okay, great, we'll build an airport. They figure everything out, and then they say, well, we don't have any money to pay for this. Next thing you know, they say, well, our state bank will lend you the money. Gee, that's kind of convenient, isn't it? So what happened this past year? Sri Lanka's airport, built by the Chinese and funded by their state bank, was repossessed by China and is now owned by China, which means they have an outpost. Not only do they own it in terms of the possession aspect, but they have an outpost that right now might be for trade, but who knows down the road, because this is going on all around the world. Africa, South America, South China Seas. So what we need to do is have people that understand that there are great risks out there, and we don't have to be the experts as freshman congressmen, but we need to be aware how important it is to stand up and listen to our generals and leaders who do understand that. Thank you.
There's no question in my mind who the biggest threat is. It's one of the biggest reasons I came on with Donald Trump. It's radical Islam, okay? They're coming after us. They're embedded in this country, and they're in many countries across the world. Let's think back to 9/11 when over 3,500 Americans went to work not knowing that they would never come home. And then let's think about under the liberal leadership how fast it was forgotten. I was in Israel and threw a rally with the Israelis there. They have a memorial there for the Americans. It's the only memorial outside this country. There are all the murdered victims' names on it. Okay? And has steel from the tower. It's moving. It's very moving. The second one, you're not going to see this coming. The second one's homegrown. It's socialism. And anybody that knows anything should agree that socialism is the Venus flytrap for any republic for which it stands. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if any of those things mean anything to any of y'all, we've got to stop. We got to worry about China and the rest of them, yes. But it's happening right here under our noses. These children that are being raised with entitlements, these people with leadership like Bernie Sanders, which, by the way, I think is the best thing that could happen to Donald Trump if he is the nomination. He's not even he's not even a Democrat. Okay, that shows you how upside down that party is. We've got to fight radical Islam, folks, and we got to fight socialism. And yes, we have to keep our eyes on those threats, but don't think for 1 minute that they don't know how brave we are. We have more guns than there are blades of grass in the prairie, and we will use them if it has to. We will never be invaded on our shores, but we certainly have our hands full across the world. But to me, radical Islam, that's where I concentrate, and I'll push back against socialism, against AOC and the rest of them. I'm a one-man squad. I don't need 3 people. If you want someone standing on conservative principles and defending the Constitution and pushing back against these people that are talking trash about our president, I'm your man, and I'll be there, and I'll be in their face.